Welcome everyone to another late edition of HogvilleNET YouTube Live. This was going to be a Midnight Madness. Made it work perfectly when Arkansas, the football Hogs, knocked off fourth-ranked Tennessee a couple of weeks ago at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Fans have energy after a game like that and willing to stay up late probably. And then I thought about it after I posted that I was coming on at midnight and decided if they lost, I'd do it a little earlier. I don't know if it's too soon after that crushing defeat. But I figured, why drag it out? Let's get to it. Let's talk some good stuff. I think it's good stuff going on right now in Arkansas Razorbacks basketball. I don't have a commitment, a private or silent commitment to give to you, but I do have some intel tonight. We could talk about a good team now. All right, we're already starting to get some cheap seat shots here. Not cheap seat, I'm just kidding. But again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. And we'll, I guess the Midnight Madness thing's out the window tonight since we're going on at 10 p.m. Way better than football, Kevin. Yeah, we're going to find out just how good the Hogs are because even in a few days, I don't know if they'll be at full strength. But you get the top-ranked team in the country, Kansas, in an exhibition game at Bud Walton Arena, Arkansas 16th. We'll see who's available. We know just recently in those tip-off tour events, 3 players I expect, if not all 3 are starters, 2 of them will be for sure if they're healthy, and one's a 6-man. So, 60% or 50% of your truly top rotation players were out. So we'll see if they're available. But let's talk recruiting. This is really what this is about. Arkansas's got its biggest weekend in terms of number of bodies in the house. 3 basketball visitors. And a couple of weeks ago, we had the Midnight Madness Special. Arkansas had 2 visitors on campus. 2 5-star guards, one already committed to the program, but helping try to seal the deal with another 5-star guard. This weekend, you've got 3 more 5-stars in the building, but only one from the class of 2025. And we're going to talk about all of it. But Chris Cenac Jr., the big man, this is the most highly rated big man Arkansas has had on campus since Khalil Ware back in the class of 22 recruitment by Eric Patrick Musselman, a 5-star big man that ended up signing with Oregon, transferred to Indiana, then was a first-round draft pick in this most recent NBA draft. But this is how big of a deal. Now, they're not the same kind of player. I'll talk about a player comparison. But Chris Cenac Jr. is the headliner on this big visit weekend. I've got some intel on him, as well as Caleb Wilson. We're going to talk a little more about Malik Thomas, Nate Ament, the other 2 visitors from the class of 2026 and 2027 here on campus, Abdou Toure and Devin Cleveland. We've got an update on J.J. Andrews stuff we've been talking about. Now we've got a reset on a new visit date for him at Arkansas, which is exactly what was telegraphed when I interviewed him a few weeks ago. And then I'm going to talk just very briefly a little more about a few little nuggets on the U of A Kansas thing, because I'm going to have a full-blown preview as we get closer to that game. I'll be back and do a pregame look at that matchup that's upcoming. Even though it's exhibition, it's still a pretty big deal. All right, so 3 minutes in, let's just get right to it. Chris Cenac Jr., I've got a lot of content on social media, by the way, not only on my Twitter feed at ARHoopScoop, but also over at Hogville.net. But I've got photos of Chris Cenac Jr. and the other 2 visitors, all 3 of them individually inside Reynolds Razorback Stadium. I posted those. Go check those out. It's pretty cool. But Chris Cenac Jr., I always say he's 6'10", pushing 6'11". Yeah, we're going to talk Shauna Bayev as well, and Mika Mirden. I'll throw that in here in a little bit. But Chris Cenac Jr. always say 6'10", pushing 6'11". He was measured last weekend again at Team USA Junior National Minicamp, and he was measured at 6'10" and 5'8", so closer actually to 6'11". So let's just go ahead and say 6'11". Measured at a 7'4" wingspan, 9'3" standing reach. That's all impressive. And he's national number 5 rated player in the country, a 5-star, and those rankings are according to On3 Sports. But this was a big deal. He had a mid-September visit that didn't materialize, pushed it out to October, a better football weekend. But here are a lot of interesting dynamics with this LSU weekend because he's from Baton Rouge. LSU's been thought for a while to be the leader in his recruitment. With Kentucky kind of as a 1 and Kentucky kind of slotted 1A or 2. And now there's some real momentum. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the dynamics with John Calipari when he gets players to campus. There's some momentum in terms of people I talk to. Some are sources, some are other national media contacts, but just kind of rounding all it up, there's some real momentum and traction they feel like for Arkansas with Chris Cenac Jr. I have a source that has already spoken to him since he's been on campus at Arkansas, and the word that he used when asked about his visit so far was impressed. He's impressed with the University of Arkansas. There's your first little nugget of intel. Players say these things. Typically, visits go well, especially at a school like Arkansas or basketball program like Arkansas. They say a lot of the same things, but I've heard players kind of change their answer and not, or answer a question they wish they'd have been asked, or they didn't use those words. Might say good. What does that mean? Yeah, that could be great for some, and good may sound like just an average answer for others. But supposedly, Cenac has been impressed so far with it, what he has seen. So that's a little bit of mid visit, like I gave you with Malik Thomas a couple of weeks ago, mid visit update. Whereas with Malik Thomas, his was exceeding what were already high expectations and going really, really, really well. I don't have all that feedback yet, but what I do have is that Cenac has said he's impressed with Arkansas. And there's more intel on him, but I'm going to get through him, talk about Caleb Wilson, and because the intel kind of wraps around both of those guys in a one of those scenarios where it's a juxtaposition between several schools, maybe for a couple or three players. So we're going to get back to some more intel, what I consider to be some intel on Chris Cenac Jr. as it relates to Arkansas and what he might do. What a horrible game. Glad you're doing this now. I mean, there's more than one way to deal with heartburn, right? But a lot of stuff, it's just move on as quickly as you can. That's why I decided to bump this up, not drag it out till midnight. But Cenac, let's go back with Chris Cenac. He's been a chart climber. I talk about it all the time. He was a guy that was barely ranked and played. He didn't even play on one of the top 3 shoe circuits. But he ended up being the best player on that up and coming. It's the 4th best circuit, in my opinion, and really rising. It's had some really good players, including some kids from Arkansas. But the Next Pro 16 Puma circuit, he really made a name for himself in the spring and summer. By the time some of the April and May events were going on, you started to see him inch up inside the top 50 or close to the top 50 in the rankings, and that just continued to climb. And then in early June at the MBPA Top 100 camp, he was the MVP. John Calipari and multiple Arkansas assistants were there to see him perform at MBPA Top 100 camp. They'd also been out to various live events back in May and then again in July after MBPA Top 100 to see him play on that Next Pro 16 Puma circuit. Well, don't forget now, he was also part of Team USA U17 FIBA World Cup gold medal team, blew everybody out, undefeated over in Istanbul and Turkey. Calipari and I think Chin Coleman, they went out there for the portion of that event that was part of the live recruiting period where coaches could be there. So Calipari saw him perform there. And then once the recruiting period opened up again in early September, Calipari's been out to Branson where he's in Leak Academy. That we know that's right up the street. Calipari's been out multiple times to see him. Chin Coleman's been the assistant that's gone with him there. So you've got multiple iterations of Calipari, staying in this recruitment in various places, including internationally, in terms of not just Chris Cenac, but some other players. Remember on that FIBA 17 and under, that Team USA had AJ DeBonsa, some class of 2026 Arkansas was recruiting, Koa Pete, Jordan Smith Jr. from 2026, Tyron Stokes. I mean, had a lot of guys that Arkansas is recruiting, including, though, Chris Cenac Jr. And this is a very versatile player. I mentioned the Khalil Ware thing, having a 5-star big. Khalil Ware, 6'11", 7 foot. I don't think Chris Cenac is quite as tall as he is. And they're really not the same kind of player. Cenac is more comparable, in my opinion, to Christian Wood, who's been in the league in the NBA about the same amount of time as Bobby Portis, about in year 10. Came out of UNLV, but he's about 6'9". He's a little shorter than Cenac. But he can stretch the floor with three-point shooting. He's got quickness and good enough handles to actually create shots on closeouts because he's effective from 3. And then he plays a lot above the rim and block shots. He's got length. I mean, he at 6'9", he plays bigger than that because of his length and athleticism and some quickness on the front line. And that's kind of who Chris Cenac reminds me of. I see a Christian Wood in there. Especially right now. I think as he gets stronger and better defensively, we might change our mind a little bit. I've said multiple times at the pro level, he's probably a stretch 4, maybe some 3-4, but probably a stretch 4. He'll need to improve defensively and get stronger, in my opinion, to really be a 4-5 at the NBA level. But I think 4-5 is a possibility at the college level. I don't see him as a wing, or as a combo 3-4. I see him more as maybe a 4-5. And you can even make some comparisons with the measurables. He's a little taller than Trevor Brazile, but he's got the soft skills. He's a guy that can knock down threes. I read a report, I think at a recent workout, he hit 16 of 20 from 3 over at Link. That wasn't, and then I think they had a scrimmage last night. I think he was supposed to arrive late today on his IG account to campus in Arkansas. He posted that he was there, so we knew he was on campus. And then again, I've got photos from him at Reynolds Razorback Stadium, and already some feedback, like I said, that he's impressed with Arkansas. Okay, so we're going to get to some more intel on him. I've kind of went through all the stuff, what was important there with Calipari, and those things, in the NBPA Top 100 camp. Well, let's go back just real quick with Team USA last weekend. He was arguably the top performer there, or the second best performer there. Depends on what analysts were there and watching it and what they said, because what I noticed consistently it was him and Darius Acuff Jr., Arkansas's 5-star, also national number 5-star. 247 Sports ranks him the 5th best player. Acuff on 3 has it with Chris Cenac. So they're both top 5 rated players. If you look at the composite rankings, they're both inside the top 10. If you put an aggregate of all the services, all 4 of them, they're both inside the top 10, but their best ratings are 5th in each in a different one, obviously. But Acuff was also one of the top performers there. So let's go back 2 weeks. Who showed up? I mean, Acuff was the first high school visit Arkansas had back in May. Then it was a drought. And then that mid-September, that first football weekend in Fayetteville, first opportunity to come when the fans are on campus and at a game and all that. You had 3 guys scheduled and nobody made it. And it was a weekend later when a class of 2026 top 5 rated 5-star Mika Murinen, who might end up reclassing to 2025, was really the first high school visitor since Acuff in May. But Acuff came back to campus. Came back for his second visit when Malik Thomas was there. Now, Acuff's not on campus this weekend, but last weekend, he was at that mini camp with Cenac, and both of them performed well. I mean, that could be an arbitrary situation, or it could be a thing where he's in his ear. We say it all the time. I say this. Acuff is a scoring lead guard, but he is a very good facilitator. He'll make good decisions. He is a winner. He plays to win, so he's going to get off the ball. He's going to set guys up. And so you just wonder what kind of interaction they had on the Hill, with this visit coming up. And we know Acuff's not afraid to recruit, because going way back, and we're going to talk about Caleb Wilson. Remember, Caleb Wilson was talking to Acuff about playing in college together. Acuff shows up for Malik Thomas's visit. Acuff and Cenac last weekend at Team USA. That might, in normal situation, that might seem completely random. But I think given the track record so far of what I know about Acuff, he's going to try to help recruit. I think most players committed to a school try to get other good players to go with them, but we actually have specifics on some of that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if on the heels of this visit, there was a push there from Acuff. We'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. We know NIL plays a big part, especially with big men. I think big men probably command more NIL on, comparing it to backcourt players. That's not true across the board. But I think if you took it as an average, that's probably true. And it's what I hear behind the scenes anyway. Nate Ament, we're going to talk about him in a little bit. 14 minutes in. Again, thank you for joining me here on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. So maybe there's an Acuff part of this that matters here. Something else that's interesting. I mentioned, Cenac being from Baton Rouge, and LSU, maybe the team that's been thought for a while to be in the lead. There's relationships with not only that area because he grew up there, but maybe on that coaching staff, and LSU set up to get the last visit. Interestingly enough, Shaquille O'Neal, the former LSU great, legend in the NBA and a man of many parts. We know he's been a rapper, and I guess DJ Diesel. He was performing at JJ's in Fayetteville, I think Friday night. But he showed up at a restaurant that the recruits were having dinner at. One of the visitors, not Cenac, I'm going to talk about the others in a little bit, put a little brief video on his Instagram account showing Shaq walking up on him in the restaurant. Well, Shaq, maybe he was at the game tonight. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I wasn't there, but he would probably be easy to see if he was. But I just wonder if he was dropping any words into Senac's ear about, yeah, hey, buddy, stick to LSU. The other thing with Cenac is he's got an LSU visit that's been scheduled for a while in November, his last visit. And it's right before the November early signing period, which I think runs the 13th to the 20th. So he's due to be on campus there in LSU in Baton Rouge, where he's from, for the last visit. So but I've got some thoughts from some other folks now that Calipari's got him on campus, that if these are accurate, if this is accurate information, it sounds like it bodes pretty well for Arkansas. I just can't vet it just yet, and I haven't been able to confirm anything or get a second back opinion on one piece of specific information, but it sounds pretty good. And again, this is maybe something to do with Caleb Wilson, or may have nothing to do with how things shake out with him. But this stuff's going to play out pretty quickly. I really hope we get Mint. Yeah, Mint's a hell of a player. We'll get to him here in a little bit. Sean Abayev was another visitor that came midweek right after Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff were on campus. So he was actually the next visitor, Sean Abayev, top 25 rated 6'7" guard in that 2025 class. Technically not a 5-star, but I think he should be. I don't think there's 15 players better than him in the country, maybe not 10 better. He's a really good player out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But getting back to Cenac, so here's what's interesting. He's got the visit coming up. Kentucky's felt pretty good about it. People who cover Kentucky, now that Calipari's got him on campus, I'm starting to learn this. I have this impression when I visit with some of these other recruiting guys that they've just seen time and time again when Calipari really sets his sight on a player and gets him on campus and brings him in. They've seen it so many times play out where Calipari gets that guy. So this could be playing into it, but the fact that Cenac's at Arkansas has got some of these analysts thinking it's going to end up being Arkansas. One of them says one of my contacts says he got a text from someone he respects and gets really good info from, saying Cenac's going to Arkansas and Caleb Wilson's going to go to the highest bidder, which could mean Arkansas in theory, I guess. That's interesting. So there's another little piece of intel for you. This is a very recent thought within the last 24 hours. I don't have another opinion that mirrors that just yet, but I do hear several things, and some of my sources felt like, again, if Calipari gets them on campus, Arkansas now is in the top 1 or 2 for just about anybody. That was the case with Malik Thomas. I said if Calipari gets him on campus, Arkansas is in the lead. I'm still there with that. We're going to talk a little bit more about it, and we'll see what develops with this upcoming visit to Kansas State that's planned for a weekend, the next weekend after this one. But let's jump into Caleb Wilson, 6'9" combo forward, another top 6 rated 5-star out of Atlanta, Holy Innocents High School. It's really kind of turned into when you look at social media and some of the recruiting analysts, it seems like a back and forth. UNC is at Kentucky. There's a Kentucky insider that it's gotten back to me. A good reporter. This guy's a good analyst. He's not just a guy that regurgitates information he sees. He actually works and goes and hustles and gets his own stuff. Fewer and fewer of those guys out there, and he's good at breaking down basketball. But one of the Kentucky beat writers says he's got a good source that's now saying that Kentucky has upped its ante on its NIL offer. It's been perceived Arkansas has had the strongest offer for Caleb Wilson, and Kentucky has supposedly, this was sent to me verbatim what was posted, I guess it was on a message board or somewhere, Kentucky's increased its NIL offer to just over $1 million. Take it for what it's worth. This is just coming, but it's coming from a respected Kentucky beat writer. Okay, so maybe that's possible. But again, the idea might be at this point, is Caleb Wilson really holding out for the highest bidder? If it was Arkansas, remember I told you Arkansas will not get caught up in a leverage game if the dollar amount exceeds where its valuation is. It's not going to make a mistake and take a leap of faith over where it's already evaluated things. That I know. I saw it play out in the transfer portal recruiting, and it played out with Arkansas via Arkansas, Kentucky over Brandon Garrison. You remember that he was coming off his Arkansas visit. Jonas Adu commits to Arkansas. Calipari had a plan to get both of those big men, and Kentucky, sight unseen, had not even had him on campus, elevated the NIL offer to get him to commit, sight unseen, did not even visit it. And Arkansas stayed firm with its valuations. It had Jonas Adu 1, Brandon Garrison 1A, and it stood firm with it. Arkansas wasn't the only school to stay firm with NIL with what Brandon Garrison was wanting. I use that example only as a reminder. You apply that same principle to all of this. That's how it should be done. So at the end of the day, if in fact Kentucky did raise its NIL offer to something more acceptable for Wilson, and now it exceeds $1 million, I don't know if that's true. I'm just telling you what I've been told that this guy posted. Well, where is Arkansas then? And does Arkansas, but look, folks, I mean, I've said this for a while. He's had a visit that has not been announced for a week, going back, I think, was it August, September? I told you it was not going to be in September. It'd be later on. We ran out of calendar in October. It became obvious when it was. It's the final weekend of October. And it just so happens to be the weekend that Arkansas is hosting Kansas for the exhibition game. Now, will it ever see the public eye? If it doesn't, that means Arkansas is probably out. If he does come on the visit, look out. There's some nervous people in Kentucky that think that if it becomes a bidding war, Arkansas will win it. And I'm just here to tell you to pump the brakes on that, because I've seen this play out. Arkansas will not reach for a player. And no matter how good they are, they will cap it at some point. And that's smart, because they're recruiting at a high level. They're getting plenty of good players. They're not desperate. And some of these schools got to find a way to beat Calipari. And so they might pay more than they want to do it. Especially Kentucky, the optics. We went through all of that before. K-Mac loves Wilson's game. I do. I think he's the best defensive big man in the country. You're seeing less traditional center types and more of these guys that can do a lot of stuff, space the floor. And a lot of times they lack some physicality and some ability to, to defend around the basket. Wilson's not the most physical guy, but his instincts are great. He's quick. He's got length, hops, and he does a really good job. They call them stocks, a combination of steals and blocks, and plus the deflections. He just wreaks havoc and is disruptive defensively, and he will take on the challenge of bigger guys. So he's kind of fearless. So I think he's the best two-way player in the country. Offensively, I've got Chris Cenac ahead of Caleb Wilson, and I think there's a planet where they could play together, because I do think Wilson, especially on the college level, will be a 4 and can defend at the 5. Cenac, I think, is also a combo there, so they might be interchangeable in terms of being on the floor together, one at the 4, one at the 5 at times. And it depends on how you want to run things and what else they're good at, what else they show you in practice they can do. But again, if the idea is Caleb Wilson's down to North Carolina and Kentucky, and this rumor that he really doesn't like Arkansas, but the NIL offer is great. Now Kentucky, based on this report, offering him over $1 million, maybe they think the offer strong enough that if he really likes Kentucky more, that'll be enough. But we'll see what really shakes out. Remember, there's also the Rich Paul clutch sport dynamic. So let's see if this visit gets announced. Let's see if he makes it to campus, and if that ends up being the reality, because it's been a reality for the longest time that he's had that visit quietly planned. So we'll see if it actually happens. And again, Chris Cenac, one of these contacts is telling me, look, I think Arkansas is getting him. And again, I start to wonder, are these dynamics so much just because it's John Calipari? Is there really information there to suggest that, or is it a reaction and the fact that it's all happening right now? So there's some momentum in some people's eyes that Arkansas might be the front runner for Chris Cenac at this point. It's hard for me to peel away from the idea that it's LSU because of that's where he's from. It's not like LSU's not going to be able to dig up NIL money. But I think when you look ahead, it makes a lot more sense to be at Arkansas because of Calipari's track record, getting guys not only drafted high, developing them and getting them ready, and all his max contracts. And Arkansas is a better basketball program than LSU is. So that helps, that even improves your exposure and opportunities. Plus, I think Arkansas has a better collection of players to put around him. Even if LSU has a really good recruiting class, it's not like LSU is going to check a box with an overall recruiting class that Arkansas is not going to check. When you add up high school and then what Calipari can do in the portal, Arkansas will likely have the better of the two schools' recruiting classes. There aren't going to be many schools that can claim they're matching Arkansas year in, year out with Calipari here in recruiting. So there's a lot of advantage for Arkansas selling Cenac. So we'll see. And then Caleb Wilson, we'll see if it's truly the highest bidder thing and he makes it to campus at Arkansas. And we'll see what plays out there. Maybe it's Kentucky and UNC, and we don't ever see it. Malik Thomas, I'm going to go back to. I'm just going to run through it. We know when he visited. You know that I think Arkansas is in the lead there. You know I already have a source that says when the dust settles on visits, he's going to be a Razorback. I said his visit went extremely well. He got to take part in that wild atmosphere when Arkansas hosted Tennessee, and I was getting live updates while mid-visit how well things were going. But now we wait to see this upcoming weekend when maybe Caleb Wilson's coming to Arkansas to visit. Maybe Malik Thomas keeps his scheduled visit to Kansas State. That's the last team in his top 7 that he's got a visit scheduled with. He canceled a visit to Alabama. He's missed 2 visits to Arkansas before making it. He did visit UConn way back when he visited Auburn and Pittsburgh, the hometown school. And Malik Thomas ranked 7th in the composite. I think by a couple of the services have him as high as 7th. He's also a top 10 composite guy. When you look at On3's aggregate, 6'4" guard, now at overtime elite, putting up crazy numbers. I mean, he's shooting over 63%. It was preseason games at overtime elite. He's been in 3 of them, and he's over 25 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.3 steals. All this is off memory. 63+% from overall from the field, but well over 50% from 3, and over 70% from on 2-point shots. And he's making 3 out of every 4 free throws, so 75% in the 3 preseason games. But he's a smooth operator, another volume scorer, can do a lot. And I think Arkansas is in the lead there. The only thing that will upset this, I believe Arkansas is on a path to get his commitment. I'm not at 100%. A couple of reasons. Still have not been able to confirm that there's a private or silent commit. And the other part of this is NIL. If he takes this visit to Kansas State and this becomes an NIL leverage game, there will be limits for Arkansas. And the word on the street is Kansas State has got good NIL money, and they're trying to package not just 1 5-star, but maybe 2 or 3. They're trying to angle some other high-level guys and bring them together. So you have to respect that. At the end of the day, the argument's the same favor for Calipari. His track record getting guys to the next level, the better basketball program's Arkansas. Now it becomes a matter of the player and his camp buying in. I think Arkansas is about to sew this up, but I don't know if he takes this other visit and this turns again into some NIL leverage thing, there will be a stopping place for Arkansas. And I only keep bringing it up because it's not 100% yet. And so until it is, I tell you what I think could upset the apple cart, could spoil things. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. It's possible. It's probably the most likely thing that could happen, because I don't think, all things being equal, this young man's going anywhere but Arkansas to team up. And the backcourt with Darius Acup Jr., I said that'll be the top backcourt, recruited backcourt in the country for that 2025 class, if that happens. And then you're trying to add to your front court with versatile guys like Chris Cenac Jr. and Caleb Wilson. Another one's Nate Ament. We've been talking a lot about him. The last time we were on, we went into that. Calipari was out to see him recently 3 times in a 2-week span. I reported on the first one. A national reporter found out about the other 2, and it was all crammed in about a 13-day, 2-week span, something like that. And now the next thing is, do you get him on campus? Calipari's not spinning his wheels going out to see guys that aren't planning to come in, and he's got a real chance to get on into his recruiting class and get them committed. So is that somebody that could be in the works for this next weekend or before the early period? It's thought that Nate Ament, because his recruiting started a little bit late. Now he's taken some visits, Texas, Duke, I think Louisville, some other, maybe Tennessee. I'm not sure where all he's been. I think those were some of them, but he's a Virginia guy. For a while, it was thought that Virginia would be one of the 2 or 3 teams to beat, but that hasn't been talked about lately. And then Tony Bennett, just out of the blue after being at ACC Media Days a few days ago, was a shocker. National championship winning head coach a few years ago at Virginia is retiring, and so maybe that completely takes Virginia out of the picture. But remember, one of the national recruiting analysts, I think it's Rob Cassidy, just recently wrote a piece and said that he thinks Arkansas is in kind of a in a 3-team deal there with Duke as the main adversary there, or maybe the most likely landing spot, and maybe Louisville in that situation with Nate Ament. And so we'll just see. Again, Ament hasn't visited Arkansas yet. And it's thought he may just wait then elite transfers. Five out of the high school class? I don't know. Calipari says he's going to keep it to 3 or 4. It's a good question. But this is a class that's so good that if you could get 5, I'd damn near, I'd be all over that. I mean, I'd be at a point where I'm damn near absolute about making sure I get 5 if I can. And then you could always get 5 guys out of the portal and say, hey, this year we're going to expand from a 9 2 deep to 10 in terms of guys that we know could fit into this. You do kind of, violate this new thing you've come up with, but not by much. And it'd be understandable if you could do that. We'll see. So Nate Ament, that's the next thing. He's ranked 3rd in the country, a 5-star by On3 Sports. The other services all have him at number 4. But again, it's another chart climber, not as far as Chris Cenac Jr. had to go, but he's moved into that top 5. Another really talented player, 6'9", reminds me of Michael Porter Jr. in the NBA. Floor spacer, another versatile. He's probably, of the 3, if you compared him to Caleb Wilson and Chris Cenac, because of their 6'9" or taller, and the things they can do out on the floor, I think Nate Ament is probably the one out of the 3 that you can make a case for could play some wing on the college level, be a 3-4 combo. I think at the NBA level, he's definitely a wing. But he's probably maybe the most versatile in terms of actually sliding into a wing possibility at the college level out of those 3. And it's not to say that you couldn't get 2 of those 3. I think Calipari has a plan to load up on as many really good players as he can, even if there may be some position similarities. He'll make it work. He's done it for years and years, and he could sell these players examples after examples of, hey, these guys were similar position-wise. Nobody thought it would work. It worked really well. And here's what they were able to do with that. So again, we'll see. I mentioned Sean Abayev. He's another guy that at least one analyst thinks that Arkansas is in the lead there. We'll see about that and how that plays out. He's a guy that can play the 1, 2, or 3. Probably mostly as a 3, but can help you as a primary handler. I mentioned Arkansas's got 2 other visitors on campus this weekend. Abdou Toure, a 6'6" wing, at Notre Dame High School in Connecticut, in West Haven, Connecticut. And this is a young man. He's ranked 13th. He's kind of been off the radar in the recruiting rankings in class of 2026. He's on 3's got him at 13th in the country right now, but he absolutely went off playing for Guinea in the FIBA U17, talking about that international play in the summer. He had a 50-point game for Guinea in the FIBA U17 World Cup. That's a big deal. 50-point game, 21 of 27 shooting. Then I watched him in that Under Armour Next Elite 24 All-Star game. I always reference that when I talk about that near triple-double that Sean Abayev had. Abayev was the MVP, but his teammate was Abdou Toure, who's on this unofficial Arkansas visit this weekend. And Toure actually hit the game-winning shot. It was an Elam ending. Game was tied at 94 all. Catch and shoot, ball fake, defender flies by, just sidestep, and knocked down a 3 to win it. But he had 16 points in that game on 7 of 9 shooting. And I was so impressed with him because he was really, holding his own and more against some other 5-star guys, some of them a year older than him in that 2025 class. It's a really good player. He's picked up a lot of offers. Again, on 3 has him ranked 13th in the class of 2026. But he's on a visit. Arkansas offered him a scholarship shortly after that performance at Under Armour Next Elite 24 All-Star game. He got an offer from the Hogs and Calipari, and so he's on an unofficial visit. He arrived on Friday early in the day, and I tweeted out some of the stuff. He had a little thing where he had just arrived to XNA in Northwest Arkansas. Arkansas also has on campus this weekend another unofficial visitor, class of 2027. ESPN ranks Devin Cleveland, a 6'3" guard out of Chicago. ESPN has him ranked as the number 11 player in the 2027 class, a 5-star. He's told me for a while, I think we reported several weeks ago, found out that he would be visiting, so I put that out there, and sure enough, he made it to campus. And again, all these visitors, all three of them, it's the most visitors Arkansas has had under Calipari for one weekend, for the same weekend visit. And of course, you have only one of those on official visit who's a pressing matter because of 2025. I do think Chris Cenac is most likely going to get his situation handled and a commitment made and signed early. I think that's the most likely. I don't think it's been decided for sure. His AAU director told me that's not been determined yet, but I think it's more likely. Maybe similar with a Caleb Wilson if they get their NIL figured out the way they want it. Nate Ament, I'm not as sure about. Kind of like Koa Pete and AJ DeBonsa, those may drag out. They may decide early and get it done, but those are just feel a little bit less likely to maybe to get done early, even though they could, relative to comparing it to maybe a Caleb Wilson or Chris Cenac. That's why these timetables and these visits are you see so much, what's a 1, 2, 3, although A-Cup's already committed, Shauna Bayev, and the 2026 Mika Murinen, who may reclass. So that was important to get him on. But you've seen a real increase in visits in the last 4 weeks versus whatever, Calipari was hired in April, and the visitors were all for his first roster, and mostly guys that were either transferring with him, guys he'd already signed. They did come in to visit, but this is true high school visiting with no ties yet to Calipari. With A-Cup off the board. Now, A-Cup is no longer the only top 10 rated committed player in the country. When Cameron Boozer and his twin brother Cameron, he's outside the top 10, but when Cameron, the second overall rated player, when those two committed to Duke, now you've got more than just Darius A-Cup Jr. off the board. That was a fun talking point for so many of these segments over the last several weeks. But again, Arkansas with a busy visit weekend, and I'm told I've got a little intel on these two visitors. It's stuff you expect to hear, but the word love was being thrown around about their visit and their experience so far at Arkansas. Again, you don't like the result from the game tonight. It's not like when Malik Thomas and all that energy and all that stuff, but there's a lot going on with these players. NIL, their futures. How can they get to the next level? What are they? I mean, the football stuff is great, seeing the fan base, all that, but win or lose, that's really not what any of these are hinging on. Although I am still a little I still have some question marks about Shaq being in Fayetteville for Chris Cenac Jr.'s visit. Big man to big man. I don't want that kind of thing. Keep it Baton Rouge. But we'll see. I mean, I joke about this stuff. J.J. Andrews, I mentioned it. We knew this. We talked about it. I interviewed him when I went to his practice a few weeks ago. It was the same day, later that day. Earlier, he releases his visit list. He updates it, adds teams, takes teams off. Well, he took Arkansas off the same day I was out before I went out there, and I asked him. And he told me, look, man, I'm going to reschedule it soon. This was like 2 weeks ago. He said, I'm going to reschedule it soon, and I want to do it during basketball season. I want to push it out and come and be on campus when there's a game. Well, he has put his money where his mouth is. By the way, after all that, a week later, that was on a Thursday, so it was 2 weeks and 2 days ago. That was on a Thursday when I was out there. We put that interview out, and then Calipari was on campus at Little Rock Christian Academy to see him. Now, Chin Coleman had been out to see him prior to that at Little Rock Christian, but that was Calipari's first stop. So exactly a week later, last Thursday, Calipari was out to see him at Little Rock Christian Academy. And then within the last 24 hours, J.J. Andrews, the 6'7" wing out of Little Rock Christian Academy, ESPN ranks him the 15th best player in the class of 2026, a 5-star. He re-released his updated visit list, and Arkansas's back on there for December 29th through the 31st. And that's significant for a few reasons. He did what he said. He was going to reschedule it soon, and he wants to go to a basketball game. Well, luck would have it, Arkansas's hosting Oakland at Bud Walton Arena on December 30th. So it'll be an opportunity for him to go to that game. So he'll be there that weekend. So, or over those days, I think, is that a weekend? I don't even know if that's a weekend. But whatever those days are, it'll be holiday break, and Arkansas does have that game. So he'll be able to fulfill what he wanted to do. So there's that. And he's a priority recruit. I've said this. I know for a fact Arkansas staff sees him that way. So we'll see where that goes. Again, Abdou Toure on campus this week, and another 6'6" wing from that class. Arkansas's got several irons in the fire with so many 5-star guys. It's to me, it's significant. I thought it was cool. The team was introduced tonight at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Calipari, they were all out there. I mean, it's basketball season. I know football's still going, but you've got this exhibition game coming up against number 1 Kansas Friday night, less than a week. I'll be there. I'm really going to get into a detailed breakdown of this matchup, and I really hope that some of the talking points matter, because I don't know what guys are going to be available just yet. Or maybe if some guys miss, it could be a long night for Arkansas if they're shorthanded. And then the other thing is we have to wait even longer to see maybe what this team is made of. But just a couple of things, I'll throw it out there. Two. I'm going to go through 2 things with newcomers, because everybody's a newcomer except Trevor Brazil, and even he kind of feels like a newcomer right now based on what I saw, as he was the most impressive available player in the 2-day tip-off tour. I was at both of them, and so there's a little newness to some of the stuff he was doing. But 2 things that stand out to me. Adou Thiero, if he's back, he was very limited. He didn't do any competitive work in the practices, but if he's back, he's done some good things at Kentucky in 2 years, but he's not been, he's not been a headline maker, and he's not been, one of their go-to guys in terms of, one of their top names, put it that way. And if, he's coming back for a 3rd college season in a program with Calipari where a lot of guys are 1 and done, or at least 2 and done. That's okay. I mean, this guy's got projections to be drafted at some point, maybe as soon as in this next draft. But one of his best games at Kentucky, had a double-double, I think 15 and 14 against Kansas last year. And it was a close game. I think Kentucky lost that game. But I think it was maybe his best game as a collegiate, as a Kentucky Wildcat, 15 and 14. So is Adou Thiero feeling good enough to play? Is he cleared? And then does he feel good because he's had success? Sometimes there's carryover. Some programs and some teams are just it's a good matchup, or it's just, guys get up for it and they remember the success they had and they build on it. One little thing I'm going to talk more about and expand on later. I just want to throw a little nugget out for my pregame. Something I've already mentioned a few times. I'm really concerned or wondering, where is Jonas Adou's health? Because in the 2 practices, going through some of that, we talked about, he was also very limited, just really didn't do much, didn't do any of the competitive stuff. But with all of the drills, even Adou Thiero was fast, and they got up and down the court in those full court drills and those shell drills. When I saw Adou, I mean, he was probably the least mobile of everybody. And you're like, well, he's a big man, but he seemed more agile and quicker to me at Tennessee. So I do think he's got some nagging stuff that's probably slowing him down. But if he's healthy enough and he's full go and he's clear to go, he's also a guy that had his problems with Zach Edey in 2 matchups last year with Purdue, while he was at Tennessee. And so I wonder, what kind of matchup situation does Hunter Dickinson, because he's not exactly like Zach Edey, and how does they make adjustments, or maybe it is a good matchup for him. LSU was a horrible matchup for Arkansas tonight. Arkansas, to me, has been the best team on the field in all 6 of its games leading up to tonight. Even though you can make a case maybe A&M, but I thought Arkansas was actually the better team, and it was always self-inflicted wounds, and those turnovers especially. Tonight, Arkansas was a bad match. It's not a good matchup for this team. That happens in football. I don't know what the final score was, but Texas didn't look like it liked the matchup against Georgia for the longest time either. I didn't circle back to look at that. I've been preparing for this, but that happens in sports. So maybe Hunter Dickinson is a better matchup for Jonas Adou, and we'll see if Adou's clear to play. So there's a couple of things. I'm really going to get into back courts, front court, all kinds of stuff to talk about an exhibition game, because I think it matters. Kansas and Bama are both deep. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think Bama did Bama have a charity game against, was it Wake Forest, and beat them? And I think they had several key guys out from what I didn't drill down on that one yet. I've got to go through all the other SEC teams here soon as I continue to work on my power rankings and develop those. I've already got the first initial rankings out. I may not change it before the start of the regular season. I may wait till the end of the first week of the season. And by the way, Arkansas number 1 Kansas in that exhibition game. Then you're on the road at TCU November 1st. Then you've got a really good mid-major in Lipscomb in your season opener on Wednesday, November 6th. And then on November 9th, the Saturday, the end of the first week of college basketball, it's number 8 Baylor in Texas, in Dallas, neutral court, technically closer to Baylor than the campus there than it is Fayetteville. But that'll be a wild one. That one's, I think, earmarked for ESPNU, nationally televised game. But in a span of 2 weeks, Arkansas is going to have number 1 Kansas and number 8 Baylor. One game doesn't count, and you hope it helps you get ready for the one that does, and including the 2 in between there, TCU and Lipscomb. But either way, that's pretty impressive work. Again, we saw what happened last year. The win over Purdue, not only did it not count or help your net or anything like that, but Arkansas didn't get much bounce off of that, right? We saw what happened. Different context, different year. I'm repeating things I've said before, but this is a little an opportunity maybe to use that tune-up situation to learn from and get better. And you certainly want to show well when it's a regular season game against Baylor. But again, number 1 and number 8 in a span of 2 weeks, and you're just barely really into the season at that point. So you're going to test yourself some and have an idea of where you need to get better and maybe what's also working for you and what guys are already starting to show you some stuff with a long way to go. And the thing now for Arkansas is to get healthy and stay that way, because 9 deep and that's it. It's okay if everybody's healthy. That's fine. But especially on that front line, if you're dealing with real attrition as you go, that's going to be hard to overcome and have the kind of season you want. I think that's the biggest concern. I thought physicality was for a while, the potential for, and I saw the strength and the mindset so far from what I've seen in Brazil, the strength and added the upper body, that's real. Can he maintain the edge that he looks like he's got in terms of being a guy that's willing to deal with contact and play, a more physical game for him relative to him? Big Z's added strength and weight after seeing Jonas Adu. That guy's big enough. And Adu Thero, again, even as a 3'4", he's not a rail thin guy. He's super strong and athletic and built right. And then Arkansas's got some sturdy guards too. So I think physicality may not be as big of a concern as I thought it might be. Depth still is. Shooting, I don't know, but I sure felt good about what Boogie Flam was doing shooting the ball. And we know Nellie Davis put up really good shooting numbers from 3 at Florida Atlantic last year. I think over 41%. So 2 guys there in your backcourt, and some of your bigs can stretch it. Calipari keeps harping on doesn't want those guys shooting threes, but if it's in the flow and it's really not unreasonable for Brazil and Big Z to take some threes. I mean, both of them last year, I think they had identical percentages. Z on a very much lower volume, but both of them were like 37.5% from 3. That's really good for guys over 6'10". I mean, that's really good. Jonas Adu wants to shoot threes. We'll see about that. We didn't see him do anything really, so not sure yet how exactly he'll be used offensively. But he's always been an opportunistic scorer guy that'll get out and run, play above the rim. And then if those soft spots in the middle of a defense, that 14 free throw line extended just inside there, 14 to 12 feet, he'll take that little face-up shot, and he's pretty good knocking it down. That's it, everybody. I didn't go over an hour this time. I went longer than I wanted to, and about almost to 50 minutes. I want to thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. If you haven't done it already, please hit subscribe, like the content if you liked it, share it if you want. We enjoy bringing it. No breaking news just yet, no private or silent commitments. Chris Cenac Jr. is impressed with the University of Arkansas. That's already been something that's been expressed to me that he has said. There are some folks in the game on the backside that think Chris Cenac Jr. May be Arkansas in the lead now. That's not my source. It's from someone I know, and that person I know is a middleman from the source. So take grain of salt. I've got nothing to on my end that confirms that or lends a second voice to it. It's just something I got today. And then Caleb Wilson, the thought is from the same guy that this is going to go to the highest bidder. So we'll see again what happens there. Just remember this: Arkansas is going to have limits on NIL. I know I repeat it, but I think it's important. Great info as always, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. We need it. I'm expecting our defense to be a strength. Well, I think fans were probably surprised, even though it didn't happen tonight. Don't shoot me down, but for the most part, through the first 6 games, the defense on the football team has been better than people were thinking about. Bobby Petrino, offense. And it's really been the defense has been the strength of the team. The offense moves the ball. It was one of the, it's been the offense has been a top 5 offense in the SEC all year, but the scoring's what dropped off because of the self-inflicted wounds, turnovers, and just dumb plays. That have, and that's part of the deal. I mean, that's part of winning and losing, and part of how things look. But Arkansas' scoring offense coming into tonight was 9th in the SEC in football. But when you look at total yards and a lot of categories, rushing, passing, all of that was top 5 in the SEC. So, in number of plays, I think they were 2nd. So they run a lot of plays, which tells you they're moving the ball. They're just not scoring. I think I don't think they've cracked. They haven't scored more than in the SEC. I don't think they've scored more than 24 points. I think that was at Auburn. Did Arkansas win that 24-14? I've still got to write an article, by the way, about Arkansas's offense, so it'll be easy. Be a quick article tonight, right? Still got to do that and get that out for Hogville.net. All right, thanks again. I just continue to talk. I guess I like talking. Thanks again for joining me on HogvilleNet YouTube Live. If something's breaking, we'll jump back in. But until next time, thanks for being here, and I'll see you then.